I used to think that if someone ever broke into my house, I would hear it. A loud noise, a door slamming, something obvious. What still bothers me is realizing that the scariest part wasn't the break-in itself. It was how long someone was inside my house before I knew they were there. This happened a few years ago when I was living alone in a small 2-story house. Nothing isolated, a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where you assume you're safe by default. I was in my early 20s, working regular hours, keeping to myself. That night, there was nothing unusual about my routine. At least, not at first. It was late evening. I was downstairs, watching something on TV, scrolling on my phone, half paying attention to both. The house was quiet in the way houses usually are at night. Occasional creaks, the sound of the heater kicking on. At one point, I thought I heard something upstairs. Not a bang, not footsteps, just movement. I remember pausing the TV and listening. Nothing happened. I told myself it was just the house settling. That explanation was enough at the time. About 15 minutes later, I heard it again. This time, it wasn't vague. It sounded like someone shifting their weight. Slowly, carefully. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, staring up into the dark hallway. I didn't call out. I didn't move. After a few seconds, everything went silent again. I checked the front door, locked. Back door, locked. I remember feeling embarrassed for being nervous, like I was overreacting. So I went back to the couch. A few minutes later, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The hallway light upstairs was on. I was certain it had been off earlier. I stood there staring at it, trying to convince myself I was mistaken, trying to remember if I'd turned it on without thinking. That's when I heard a sound I couldn't explain away. A soft click. The sound of a bedroom door being gently closed. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Every instinct told me not to move. Someone was upstairs, not rushing, not panicking. They were careful. That was the part that terrified me the most. I quietly backed into the nearest room and locked the door. I turned off the lights and sat on the floor, holding my phone with shaking hands. I didn't call the police right away. I was afraid that if I made any noise, they would know exactly where I was. From behind the door, I heard footsteps. Slow, measured. They stopped right outside the room I was hiding in. I watched the doorknob. It didn't shake. It didn't rattle. It turned slightly, then stopped. Whoever was there didn't force it. They didn't rush. After a few seconds, they let go. I heard the footsteps move away. That silence afterward was worse than any noise. I stayed there for what felt like forever, barely breathing. Eventually, I heard the back door open and close. Only then did I call the police. When they arrived, they told me someone had entered through a small window at the back of the house. The screen had been removed cleanly. No fingerprints, no sign of a struggle. One officer said something I still think about. He told me whoever broke in wasn't looking for valuables. They were watching. I moved out a few months later. Nothing like that ever happened again. But even now, when I'm alone in a quiet house and I hear something upstairs, I don't assume it's just the house anymore. I always thought I'd notice if someone was following me, someone walking too close, a car turning around too many times, something obvious. What I didn't expect was that I wouldn't see them at all. I'd just carry proof of it around with me, in my pocket, everywhere I went. This happened about a year ago. I live alone in a small apartment on the edge of town, nothing isolated, just quiet enough that you don't expect trouble. At the time, my routine was simple. Work, home, the same routes every day, nothing unusual. At least that's what I thought. It started with a notification on my phone. I didn't recognize it at first. I almost ignored it. It said something like, "An AirTag has been detected near you." I don't own an AirTag. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Someone on the bus, someone in the store, something temporary. But when I tapped the notification, my phone showed a map. a thin line tracing my movements, from my apartment, to work, to the grocery store, and back home again. The alert said the AirTag had been traveling with me for several hours. That was the moment I stopped brushing it off. I spent the rest of the day trying to be logical. I checked my jacket pockets, my backpack, my shoes, nothing. The app gave me an option to play a sound from the AirTag. I stood alone in my apartment and pressed the button. Silence. I tried again. Nothing. The app said the tracker was nearby, close. But I couldn't hear it. That night, another notification appeared. This time, the map was longer. It showed the AirTag leaving my apartment with me in the morning and returning with me at night. Someone didn't just know where I was, they knew where I lived. Over the next few days, the alerts kept coming. Every morning, every evening. The tracker followed the same routine I did. That's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. Whoever placed it there wasn't just passing by, they were waiting. One night, I sat in my living room with the lights off, watching the map on my phone. The AirTag icon was perfectly still, right on top of my apartment. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Then I heard a sound outside, a soft scrape, like a shoe against concrete. I stood up slowly and looked through the window. At first I didn't see anyone. Then, movement. Across the street, partially hidden by the shadows, was a man standing near my building. He wasn't walking. He wasn't on his phone. He was just looking up at my window. I didn't turn the lights on. I didn't move. I watched him stand there for what felt like minutes. Then he stepped back, checked something in his hand, and walked away. I checked my phone. The AirTag location hadn't moved. It was still marked as being with me. That night I didn't sleep. The next morning I went to the police. They helped me search my belongings. The AirTag was eventually found taped underneath the lining of my backpack, hidden so well I'd never have found it myself. The police took it. They said it wasn't the first time they'd seen something like this. They never found the man. I moved a few weeks later. Even now I still check my phone whenever I leave the house. Not because I expect another alert, but because I learned something I can't forget. Sometimes the scariest part isn't being watched. It's realizing how long you were being followed before you noticed.